And I've got to ask you something. You know, what is the risk here with the run-up in Bitcoin in anticipation of this move? Gary Gensler has not been known to be a friend to the crypto industry per se. What is the risk of the industry being wrong?
There's always a risk, Sonali. That's the reality. But if we look at some indicators, one great indicator, GBTC, the Grayscale Bitcoin Investment Trust, it is the largest in terms of AUM of the Bitcoin trusts listed in the US today, has been trading at a discount historically. That discount has really started to converge in the last few weeks and close. That's one important indicator. The second important indicator, prediction markets. How are people pricing? We see 90% certainty on approval. And then the last piece is, you know, the SEC is a government agency. They have to share records of who they're meeting with, what they're doing. In the last few weeks, there's been a lot of meetings, even over the holidays, meetings of SEC staffers with some of the proposed issuers, including BlackRock, Van Eck, and others, to discuss specifics of these S1s, of these applications that have been filed. So on all counts, it looks like all of the small technical issues that have emerged over the last few months are starting to be discussed, resolved. So all of those things, in my view, are leading to a lot of optimism.
I've been using this week as an opportunity to not talk about Bitcoin because we talk about it so much. I think, and we get a lot of notes about this too from people viewing in about other areas in crypto and what would be the drivers of gains in things like Solana or Ethereum. How do you feel about it?
Absolutely. Look, we look at the crypto asset class as a whole at Coinshares, and there's a lot happening. The story isn't just Bitcoin. And by the way, there's a lot of different ways to play Bitcoin. You've got publicly listed exchange traded products. MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor cannot stop buying Bitcoin. It's sort of become a de facto Bitcoin ETF. MicroStrategy now owns 1% of Bitcoin in circulation. And then publicly listed miners, if we look at Bitcoin miners who are now starting to also delve into the broader GPU compute space, those have been on a crazy tear in Q4. I call it the most hated rally. But then we've got Solana. Solana started the year at around $7 after the FTX bankruptcy. There were a lot of concerns throughout the year around Solana liquidations from the FTX estate and some of the knock-on effects there. Solana today trading at $110. So if you are holding Solana, it's a great year. There's been a tremendous amount of activity on the Solana blockchain, in the Solana ecosystem. And then, you know what? I'm going to go back to Bitcoin. You're going to hate it. But Bitcoin layer 2s, the Stacks ecosystem, is really heating up, which is bringing smart contracts to Bitcoin. Ethereum, while Ethereum hasn't seen a lot of price activity this year, and coincidentally, not a lot of inflows either, Ethereum still has a lot of activity. There's a lot of development in terms of scaling Ethereum, bringing down those transaction fees, which do get quite high at times when there's a lot of demand for compute on the network. So I think overall, it's been a really exciting Q4. A lot of people were sidelined. We're not expecting this rally, which is why I love to call it the most hated rally. We weren't ready.
Not hated if you're in it. Meltem, any idea what went on at Digital Currency Group, the parent of Grayscale, for Barry Silver to be stepping down?
Look, I have no idea what's happening behind the scenes, but I do think Grayscale, obviously, they have $35 billion in assets under management, obviously largest holder of Bitcoin in the ETP space today. I think there's a lot of questions right now around the future for the GBTC product, Grayscale. There's been discussion of a converting the trust to an ETF structure that will allow for redemptions. As you recall, historically, the reason the product has traded at such a high premium and then such a high discount is because of the fact that there's only creation, no redemption. Just this morning, Kathy Wood, right here on the air on this channel, right, was discussing some of her concerns on the tax implications of the potential conversion. So to me, the indication is probably, they're gearing up to start to shift into ETF mode. But looking at the tea leaves, it's always difficult to know what's going on behind the scenes. And if I know anything about crypto, it's that I am always, always surprised. You could not make this up. ChatGPT could not write the timelines that we have in this industry.
This run up in miners, is it similar to what happened in China when it sort of banned the miners and then everyone unplugged and then there was this skyrocketing? Is that what people think is going to happen at halving time? Is that why we're seeing this run up?
I think the run-up is driven by two things primarily. Number one, there has been a tremendous inflow of capital into publicly listed Bitcoin miners, and Bitcoin miners are no longer just mining Bitcoin exclusively. We've got folks like CoreWeave, Hut 8, and others getting into large language models for AI, right? They're running a bunch of GPUs. They're building data centers that are serving a wide range of high-performance compute. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin's not the only ecosystem, right, that requires mining, that requires chips, that requires data centers. So I think there's just been a wide availability of capital because of this AI narrative and because of the run-up in Bitcoin. And then the second big thing, we're hitting all-time highs in terms of hash rate. There's a lot of activity on top of Bitcoin. There are BRC20 tokens, similar to Ethereum's ERC20 tokens. We've got Bitcoin NFTs, which are called ordinals. I'm throwing a lot of lingo out here, but there's been a ton of activity on Bitcoin. So we're seeing all-time high hash rate on Bitcoin, a lot of compute directed at it, and fees. For the first time in the history of the Bitcoin network, transaction fees are exceeding the block reward for Bitcoin miners, which is hugely promising in terms of future revenue streams.
Now, you were talking about layer twos earlier. I'm really curious about how the Bitcoin network is evolving. I mean, how do you think about what is possible on the back of Bitcoin moving forward, especially because you saw the Lightning story really start to advance certain forms of payments earlier, but now there are more options.
Yeah, I think the Bitcoin story is one that continues to evolve. I like to say I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I'm certainly a believer in Bitcoin. It is the first cult I joined, and so I still love it very much. I think the really interesting story that's always existed around Bitcoin is, oh, Bitcoin's digital gold. Oh, it doesn't need to ever change. It's perfect as it is, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it is all of this computing power that is directed at Bitcoin and this very proof of work mechanism that Bitcoin has so often been criticized for because it is so computationally intensive that I think really makes Bitcoin a really ideal settlement network for global transactions. And then I think the other aspect that's really exciting to me is with all of these AI agents out there, AI bots, some people now even have AI girlfriends, we need a digital currency that can work for agent-to-agent payments, that can work in this world where we have more autonomous AI agents, we have machine-to-machine payments. And so for that, I think Bitcoin is a really optimal medium. But obviously, Bitcoin layer one, it's slower transaction times, very expensive transactions with all of this demand for block space that's driving revenue for miners. So there's great opportunity right now, a lot of innovation in trying to build on top of the security of Bitcoin, but offer these different features in terms of scalability.